Hi, it's Dwyer. November the 23rd, 2020. GamblersAdvisory.com, a free site. BettingAngle.us, a free site. Let's talk about three extremely high-risk betting plays that I like. Right? I'm prepared to take underdogs in situations where I think they have a chance to win, even where they're the less talented fighter in the ring. We'll talk about three such fights I have here before. We'll summarize them in this video. But first, remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, the first fight to me is a preposterous casino mispricing. In other words, the chances of victory that they're giving the underdog here are unrealistic. The underdog has a much better shot of winning this fight outright than the bookies want you to believe. And that's the ridiculously priced Daniel Dubois, he's the favorite, versus Joyce fight. Right? Understand, bookies simply want to make a profit. They're preying on your misperceptions. Now, Daniel Dubois is relatively unproven. His biggest win to date is a victory over Nathan Gorman. I saw him getting tested by Richard Lardy, who was in the middle of the ring and started trading with him. Right? You understand that whoever he's sparred with, and he's sparred with the best. I understand he sparred with Anthony Joshua and people like that. Whoever he's sparred with, you understand that this guy lacks primetime experience. Now, Joyce is going to be by far the highest level opponent he's faced. Right? By far. Understand, too, you look at Dubois' style and you understand this is an unorthodox style. Hook heavy, power punch heavy, right? Aggressive, cuts off the ring on you when he's at his best. This is an unorthodox style that if an opponent has seen it before, if an opponent can figure out the angles, right? Think fighting Mike Tyson, right? If you haven't seen it before, you're overwhelmed by the volume of power shots, by the outright aggression. If you've seen it before, though, you expect it. You actually have strategies. You know he's vulnerable to a jab as he gets tired. Well, understand, Joyce, who's a technician. In other words, he's a guy who comes in, there's a heavy mental side to his game. Has sparred with Dubois before. He knows Dubois' hand speed. Right? Dubois doesn't strike me as a guy who has a plan B, a plan C, and a plan D. That fastball is working too well for him to have to rely on other pitches. You also notice the Lardy fight is really an important fight here. You also notice that Dubois isn't great at pacing himself. If you actually force him to perform, right, if he can't take the round off, he starts to tire. Now, Joyce has been in the ring, has seen him. Joyce can keep him at the end of a jab. Right? Joyce has been in the ring with people like Usyk in real fights. Right? It was a pseudo-amateur fight. But understand, Joyce was in the ring with Usyk. Right? In my opinion, Joyce should have won the Olympic gold medal. I thought the judges jobbed him in that final. And since betting is an expectation game, people don't view Joyce as the Olympic gold medalist because he didn't win it. If you look at the fight, he won it. He just wasn't awarded the victory. Yes, Joyce is a lot slower than Dubois in terms of hand speed. Hand speed isn't everything. The best fighter in the sport pound for pound right now, Terrence Crawford, doesn't have the fastest hands. Right? Joyce, if he keeps Dubois turning, if he makes it out of the early rounds, if he forces Dubois to have to walk through his jab, if he gets Dubois on his back foot, folks, in the comment section to this video, tell us the fight where Dubois is on his back foot. Right? Understand, some of the guys Joyce fought, the public wrote off, but they were actually very crafty fighters. Romain Stavern used to be heavyweight champion. Heavy punch. Heavy punch. Joyce was able to work him. Joe Hanks was unbeaten until he faced Andy Ruiz. Right? Joe Hanks fell apart against Joe Joyce. Joyce knows how to put his punches together. I think that Joe Joyce Dubois fight is an opportunity for gamblers. I like the Joyce part of the play. I'll hedge it with Dubois by stoppage. What I'm not going to do is to just take Dubois blindly in that fight. I think a nuanced gambler has an opportunity to take advantage of that skewed line. Right? Joyce is a live underdog. Let's talk about another fight I've referenced here before online, where I think you have a real live underdog. Now, British people are going to start laughing, but understand, I fully understand, I fully get that Anthony Joshua, when he throws off his hesitation, is a great athlete. Right? I get that. The Anthony Joshua who drops Andy Ruiz early in that fight shows you that he's two-handed. Right? He's two-handed. I believe it's a left hand that drops Ruiz. He's two-handed. When he decides to just throw punches, Joyce can wing them. He's dangerous. He gets Dominique Brazil hurt, then he starts hunting Brazil. That's a different Joyce. That's a different Joshua than we're accustomed to seeing. Right? I recognize he's an athlete. I get it. But that's not the guy who shows up on fight night early, is it? You don't get to see Joshua's A game, do you? Most of the time. Right? Joshua is cautious. He's cautious. He's the big and clunky guy who doesn't trust his tools. He needs to see an opening before he runs through the opening. Now that's exactly the kind of opponent that a cagey vet who's been in the ring with people like Vladimir Klitschko, Derek Chisora, Yui Fury, right? That's exactly the kind of opponent that a Kubrat Pulev wants. Because Pulev's game is to hit you in the face with a jab. It's not to upset you. It's not to get you hot and bothered, where you say, okay, damn it, I'm going to take risks. I'm going to let my hands go. I'm desperate. No, this is death by 1,000 cuts. This is a fighter who knows how to edge you most of the rounds. You're not offended. You're not insulted. You're just losing the fight. To beat Pulev, in his only loss, very cautious Vladimir Klitschko had to start leading with right hands. Right, Klitschko, who lived behind a jab, right, was okay with just, beating you with a jab over 12 rounds. Didn't have that killer instinct unless he had to use it. Had his own trainer, Emmanuel Stewart, yelling at him during the Sultan of Bragamov fight that he needed a stoppage. Right? Had to motivate him. That Klitschko, who wasn't the kind of guy who said, hey, look, this guy doesn't have enough to deal with my power. Let me impose myself on him. Right? Klitschko didn't have that Mike Tyson mentality, that Sonny Liston mentality. But against Kubrat Pulev, early Klitschko realized, I can't live behind my jab. I have to get aggressive. I have to get out of my comfort zone. I have to start to lead with right hands. Folks, that's the conclusion that Anthony Joshua is going to have to reach. But we know when Joshua gets out of his construct, he's vulnerable. Just ask yourself the simple question. How many times did he hit the canvas in that first Andy Ruiz fight? Let's ask a more troubling question. What adjustments did he make in that Andy Ruiz fight when the fight turned on him to right the ship? Was he a fighter looking like a lost puppy at his corner, hoping for some advice? Or was he the guy in the ring, making adjustments, seeing the action, relying on his own two eyes? I believe he's the former, not the latter. Right? Kubrat Pulev has been in some close fights where he's relied on his tools. Look, I'm not saying Pulev is the athlete Joshua is. I'm not saying Pulev has the power Joshua has. I'm not saying Pulev is two-handed like Anthony Joshua. But what I am saying is Kubrat Pulev, look at the Ustinov fight. Kubrat Pulev is the kind of guy who, if you can't handle his jab, and it's one of the best in the sport, if you can't handle his jab, and he's edging you on rounds, Pulev has the mental toughness to stay the course. If you get to round 4 or 5 and Pulev, who's older, a vet, right? Older guys might not physically be who they once were, but they're a lot smarter than who they once were because they have a lot of experience. If Pulev figures out, and it would be around the middle of the fight, if he figures out that he has the edge on Anthony Joshua, he's going to keep Joshua outside. Joshua's going to have to open up, just like Ustinov tried. And when you start to open up on Kubrat Pulev out of desperation, that's when Pulev really starts to take you apart. Right? I think Joshua has a lot of potential. But I just don't trust him enough to believe in the betting line that they have on the Pulev fight. There again, I think Pulev is a live underdog. I'll hedge the play with Joshua by stoppage. Let's talk about the last fight. People need to figure out mid-range hookers. Right? Understand. They want you to come after them. A mid-range hooker wants to engage you. They don't want you running from them. They don't want a slow-moving fight. Folks, this is the gunslinger looking for the shootout. So Danny Garcia's worst moments in the ring involve Keith Thurman on his back foot, moving away from him. They involve Lamont Peterson moving away from him. Now he's fighting Errol Spence. Spence is a big favorite, right? You know, Spence, I'll admit, has a lot of talent. If this is prime Errol Spence, if Errol Spence wanted to, if he has the coordination and confidence in his spatial ability, he could fight this fight like he fought the Mikey Garcia fight. He could say, Danny, here's my jab. I'm going to operate behind this jab and I'm going to be on the move. You're going to have to get through my reach to find me before you start throwing mid-range. I'm going to keep this fight at long range. And then we both know that my name was made on my short-range game. So I'm going to pick my spots. I'm going to win some of the slow rounds. Then I'm going to come inside and I'm going to rough you up. Then I'll take chances after I build a lead. Yes, Errol Spence could do that. But folks, he's coming off an underreported major car crash. You're getting glimpses of the truth now. Glimpses of the truth. In Errol Spence interviews, he's saying things like, this is my second chance. But player, you're unbeaten. Player, you have the belt. What's this talk about second chances? Who stopped you the first time? Now people laugh. I've read the comments here online. I'm telling you, when you come out of a near-death experience, life is different. Life is different. You were taking risks before you didn't even know about. Now you know about them. Right? It's the kind of deal where you see people you love and you just want to go over and hug them. Before, you took that person for granted. Now you understand they're essential to your existence. Right? When I see fighters who've had major problems, right? When I see the fighter and they're back in the ring, they're not the same person for several fights. I think Danny Garcia, and I'm not saying Danny's A game's as good as Errol Spence's A game. What I'm saying is, I don't believe Errol Spence can fight the Mikey Garcia fight. I don't care what he's doing in sparring. Right? Sparring's like hitting free throws in an empty gym. Right? If you are having problems with free throws, you might be able to hit them in an empty gym. Try that with less than a minute left, your team in need of points, in a crowded arena where people are yelling at you. Different experience. Fight night is different than sparring night, than sparring day. Right? It's just a different experience. That's why you have fighters getting rid of rust. If there's a right time to fight Errol Spence, it's right now. If I'm Danny Garcia, my assumption would be, you know what? Moving around the ring behind a jab just requires too much thinking, coordination for this guy to pull off. I'm expecting Errol Spence to try to come inside and fight me. I'm expecting Errol Spence to try to impose himself on me. Now, folks, fight styles have expiration dates. Before the car crash, Errol Spence came inside and tried to impose himself on Shawn Porter. We started to see that Errol Spence was getting older. Right? That rough and tumble fight style didn't exactly blow Shawn Porter out, did it? There are many of you who feel Spence lost that fight. So Spence's A game right now, just because of age and attrition, and Father Time ultimately beats all of us, is now an A- game, isn't it? I don't believe Spence is ready. I believe to move like Ali, to have guys walking into punches, to be judging guys as they enter the pocket, that just takes a lot. It takes a lot more, in my opinion, than just coming in and smashing guys. Right? I don't think Errol Spence, right after the car crash, is going to be ready for the back foot game. I think he's going to find himself trading with a guy who wants to trade. Understand, Danny Garcia is an advanced mid-range hooker. Right? I know it's tempting to look at his fight against Shawn Porter. Right? Shawn Porter looms over both sides of this fight. And to say, hey, Shawn Porter roughed him up a little bit. Why can't I do what Shawn Porter did? That's because Shawn Porter was not in a major car crash and then out of the ring in his first fight back against Danny Garcia. Just like if Shawn Porter had been in a major car crash, you would say, wow, Shawn Porter might not fully be himself. Right? Just like you'd be surprised if someone said to you, Shawn Porter was in a major car crash right before that Danny Garcia fight. Just like that would surprise you. The fact that Errol Spence was in a major car crash should have you questioning this betting line. Folks, Danny Garcia used to be a champion. Folks, Danny Garcia has beaten many big names in boxing. I call Danny Garcia a mid-range hooker, right? Danny, by the way, knows all the tricks. He looks away. He throws a punch. It's here. You don't know whether the punch is going to hit you in the ribs, whether he's going to turn it over, or whether he's going to come up top with it. Danny also has a straight right hand. Look at his fight against El Terrible. Right? He has a straight right hand. By the way, that's the level of opposition the guy has fought. Danny Garcia's resume is littered with KG vets. The fact that he fought Keith Thurman. The fact that he has already fought Shawn Porter. The fact that he fought El Terrible. Right? The fact that he fought Lamont Peterson. You should be looking at Danny as exactly the kind of KG vet who can take advantage of a guy in his first fight back after a major car crash. I know people are going to say, hey, look at all the people Errol Spence trains with. Look at Errol Spence's trainer. He's one of the best in boxing. Guys, fight night is different than sparring. It's a different experience. Guys look good in the gym, and then on fight night, when they start getting hit, what do they start remembering? Their last pro fight. Things in their life that didn't go well after that last pro fight. Right? It's different. Understand, too, for judges, the narrative is different. I see Errol Spence getting a little roughed up. Before the car crash, I'm thinking, okay, Errol's having a little bit of a slow round. After the car crash, I might be thinking, wow, did the car crash take this much out of him? That narrative might color my scoring in later rounds. It might become the story of the fight. I think Danny Garcia is catching Errol Spence at the right time. I like Danny Garcia to win that fight. I'll hedge the play with Spence by KO. So to sum up, right, let's just say that I think Joyce, I think Kubrat Pulev, and I think Danny Garcia are live dogs. Right? They're fighting formidable opponents. Daniel Dubois, unbeaten. right? Anthony Joshua, unified heavyweight champion. Errol Spence, unbeaten. I know that's how the public sees it. I know that's why the lines are so staggered. Right? Be a profit taker. Understand, some of these lines are so out of whack that if you just win one of these three bets, you'll make a net profit. You win the Joyce bet. Folks, you make a net profit. Understand how these fights go, too. The public has an expectation. They must, according to this line, that Dubois is going to come out and start to blow out Joyce from the first round. Right, Joyce, a guy who was not blown out by Alexander Usyk. Right, so what'll happen, you're on the right side of the expectation game because expectations swing. So if Dubois comes out and doesn't dominate in the first round, doesn't dominate in the second round, folks, there's going to be panic by the start of the third round if Joyce has won the first two. If Joyce has just looked demonstratively better than the underdog he is, there's going to be panic. Right? Think about what happens if you're watching the Anthony Joshua fight and Joshua can't figure out, just cannot figure out Kubrat Pulev's jab. Understand, Pulev has fought and beaten some guys with some great jabs. Yui Fury has one of the better jabs in boxing. It was Kubrat Pulev's jab that won the day. Where are you if you get to round 4? And Kubrat Pulev has won at least 2 of the first 4 rounds. Joshua is tentative and cautious, is afraid to throw caution to the wind. Might have even tried to lead with right hands, but doesn't have the timing, doesn't have the know-how of Vladimir Klitschko. Understand, the Klitschko we remember had already been through several car crashes. Right? Klitschko looked terrible in some fights. Look at the end of the Ross Purity fight. Look at the Corey Sanders fight. Look at the Layman Brewster fight. It took Klitschko a while to fine-tune his game. Right? Joshua has only had 1 car crash so far. You don't even know if he's solved what went wrong that night. Because in the rematch against Andy Ruiz, he was running away from Andy, wasn't he? It wasn't like he decided to stay in the pocket with Andy and, oh, I have some new tricks. Or, oh, I myself don't believe that first fight was legit. I'm going to show you in the pocket that you can't repeat. That's not what we saw. We saw Joshua moving away from Andy Ruiz in the rematch. Right? If Andy could just solve the foot speed problem, and I know it's hard, but if he could just solve the foot speed problem, figure out ways like Golovkin has of just running across the ring at a guy who's backing up. Right? Because Joshua backing up is not going to hit you like Ali hit Liston in that rematch. Right? If Joshua could figure that out and if Ruiz could figure that out and force Joshua to fight him, are you sure Joshua would have the answers? I'm not. Right? And let me just say this about Errol Spence. The minute a guy starts saying things like, this is my second chance on life, then you know life is different. Right? Do you think that when Errol Spence was fighting Kell Brook and jumped in the pocket winging shots, he fully understood the risk he was in? Right? A lot of being a great young fighter is not understanding the risk inherent in what you're doing. Right? I believe each of the guys I've named here, Joyce, Pulev, Danny Garcia, are live underdogs. I'll take my chances. I'll hedge the play with the favorites by stoppage. Right? If I win any of the three, I'm going to be in the profit zone. I can look at the other two fights and I can exhale and laugh a little bit, knowing that I've hit on long underdogs. Right, folks? Kubrat Pulev, as I make this video, has only lost once. Once in his career. You saw Derek Chisora against Usyk. You saw Derek Chisora against Kubrat Pulev. An argument can be made that Pulev looked better against Chisora, who is a risk taker, than did Usyk. Right? You saw Joseph Parker against Yui Fury. You saw Kubrat Pulev against Yui Fury. An argument can be made that Kubrat Pulev looked better against Fury than did Joseph Parker. This is a world-class fighter who shouldn't be going off at odds like this. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. I hope you leave your comments in the comment section of this video. Understand, in gambling, it's not about always taking the favorite or just taking favorites. Rather, you're taking calculated risks, and you have to pick underdogs who are live underdogs at times. I've tried to give you 3 in this video. That's how I see it. I look forward to your comments in the comment section of this YouTube video. Thanks for stopping by.